Call the North Planning Commission for October the 12th to order at 6 o'clock. Could you please rise for the flag?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Roll call.
Thank you. Chair King,
Here.
Vice Chair Labonte. Here. Commissioner Howell,
Here.
Commissioner Van Domelen,
Here.
Commissioner Nunnenkamp,
Here.
Commissioner Miller. Not see. Commissioner Ken Odell is excused, and your ex officio tonight is City Councilor Trista Papen. There she is on the
Here.
screen. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Item number 5 is public comment. This time it is available for anyone on the Zoom or in the audience to have comments on the planning commission business that's not on the agenda. Is there anyone?
I would like to, Mr. Chair, Chair King, if I might.
Okay,
Thank you. Chair King, members of the Planning Commission, my name is Duncan Wise. I am the president of the Oregon Business Council. And I had my council, my staff and I had the pleasure of staffing the semiconductor task force that you may have heard about that was chaired by Governor Brown, Senator Wyden, and Maria Pope from Portland General Electric. And it was a committee to investigate the opportunities that Oregon has as we see the surge of interest in semiconductor manufacturing in the United States. As you are
before you go any further, let me ask you, is this in regard to the economic opportunities analysis?
yes.
Well, then that should be held until that public hearing is open.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood. I didn't, in terms of where I was supposed to be on the agenda. I apologize.
All right, thank you, sir. Anyone else? Hearing or seeing none. Item number 6 is approval of the minutes for September the 14th. Everyone read those? Are there any changes, corrections?
I move to accept them as written.
Second. It's been moved by Commissioner Nunnenkamp, second by Commissioner Houck for approval of the September 14 regular session minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The minutes are passed. Okay, item number 6, or excuse me, 7 is public hearing. Our first public hearing is the file number 22-096 Economic Opportunities Analysis Amendment, which is a legislative hearing, which will be making recommendations. So if I could get staff to give us the procedures for the public hearing.
So we left it open. Like
No,
No.
oh, excuse me. Yes, and that has already been done. So we have.
So they're
opened-
still in
Yeah, we
place.
have opened this public hearing as the record is open. So if we could have any updates from staff.
Thank you, Chair King. Andy, if you'll play the EOA slide, please. So, yes, as we just discussed, the public hearing on the Economic Opportunities Analysis Amendment, City File number 22-096, is continued from the September Planning Commission meeting. We wanted to give staff a little more time to work on a few pieces of information that were needing to be added, as well as communicate with some of our regional and industry partners to give us a chance to put forward the robust document you have in your packet this evening. Andy, if you'll advance. So the North Plains City Council adopted the Economic Opportunities Analysis on June 6th of this year. DLCD did place an appeal in on that adopted document on July 6th of 2022, asking that the city take a look at a couple of items related to target industries and how land need is established. City staff worked to amend the EOA to address the concerns of DLCD staff, working with the DLCD staff as well as other the Oregon Semiconductor Task Force, as well as our regional partners. The Planning Commission tonight is being asked to conduct a public hearing and make a recommendation to the City Council that in the same way that we did in the spring of this year for the original EOA. Next. The staff report that you received a week ago on October 5th provides findings that demonstrate compliance with the North Plains Zoning and Development Code, the North Plains Comprehensive Plan, and the statewide planning goals that are required for us to find compliance with for adoption of a plan text amendment, which this amended EOA represents. And there's an image of the staff report that you all received a week ago. Next. So the documents that we're looking to adopt are on the left, the economic development chapter of our comprehensive plan. We have some updates based on the new findings and population forecast numbers. And then on the right is the amended economic opportunities analysis itself. All of the red underlined text is the new amendment text, and it goes throughout the document that you received prior to this evening. Next. The North Plains amended EOA identifies existing and emerging economic opportunities within and beyond the North Plains UGB, establishes a clear economic development direction for the city that is consistent with local, regional, and state market trends and planning policies, and identifies an adequate 20-year supply of developable land for businesses and jobs. So this is the purpose of the EOA, and this document does accomplish that. The testimony that you received today included 2 letters written by the city of North Plains that are in response to the October 6th was written with the EOA amendment and sent to DLCD staff. The letters on the right from DLCD and Thousand Friends of Oregon were submitted into the record, and the October 12th North Plains staff letter was a response to those letters. So those are all in the record for this evening and were sent via email today, and we have hard copies available if anybody would like to look at those. So in conclusion, the Planning Commission is considering a recommendation to the City Council of this amended economic opportunities analysis and the corresponding comprehensive plan text amendment to the economic development chapter of your comp plan. The Planning Commission may recommend that the City Council approve with conditions, or deny the amended EOA and text amendment. Staff recommends the Planning Commission recommend approval of the city file number 22096. The amended EOA and comprehensive plan text amendment to the City Council for a public hearing at their regularly scheduled meeting on November 7th, 2022. And in addition, Finance Director Bill Reed is here. If you have technical questions about the EOA, I can talk about the process and the amendments and anything to do with how we go through the adoption. Bill can talk about anything economic related. Thank you.
All right. Are there any additional applicant testimony? None. I'll entertain testimony from proponents. People wishing to speak in favor of. Hearing none. Is there anyone on Zoom? Oh, yeah, you can.
Should I go? Is this, Mr. Chair, would this be a good time? I would, if I might speak. This is Duncan.
Oh, I was going through proponents, opponents, but I guess we'll take any testimony.
Okay, I think I would say I am a proponent, but I mainly wanted to just, I'm here really to provide a little background for you on the semiconductor opportunity. I'm not, I must confess, not totally a student of all the regulations in your jurisdiction, but I did want to offer some comments, and I think in general I'd be supportive of the staff recommendation. But if I might, I just wanted to give you a little context about what an incredible opportunity I think you have in your region and in your community, if I might. Again, this is Duncan Wise at the Oregon Business Council. So this is a good moment. I would, again, I apologize for my earlier interruption to the process. So is it all right to go ahead?
Please continue.
Yes, thanks. So as I mentioned, we were responsible for staffing the semiconductor task force, and our recommendations came out a little bit earlier, a couple of months ago. And one of the key finding of the task force is that there is very likely to be a surge of investment in semiconductor in the United States, in part because there's a great global demand, you know, about the supply chain disruptions in semiconductor. There's a great interest in bringing a lot of the manufacturing onshore back into the United States. And there is extraordinary interest in ensuring that the United States remains a leading semiconductor design and manufacturer in the world for both security reasons and just to maintain a competitive position internationally. And if you take a look at the semiconductor industry in America, you will find the most concentrated semiconductor employment and innovation in Oregon, and frankly, right next to you in Hillsborough and right in Washington County. It really is the heart of semiconductor in America in terms of design and advanced manufacturing. And with a lot of suppliers here, we have an extraordinary opportunity to build on the momentum that we've had over the last, frankly, 30 years in terms of building the Intel and many of its other companies that are here. And again, as we looked at this opportunity, it could mean thousands of jobs, huge revenue for public sector, a lot of wonderful opportunities for people who might otherwise not have opportunities for really good employment, lots of career opportunities across the whole continuum of education and skill level. So an extraordinary opportunity. And one of the key constraints is land. We've had over the 90s, about 2,000 acres of land were employed for manufacturing. We simply, as we looked at it, we have very, very little industrial land available. And so we're right now losing opportunities in our state to grow this sector because of the lack of land. So as you do your work and think about your location, I would just highly encourage you to think boldly about what the opportunities are here in semiconductor and all the related fields, but also more broadly, Oregon is overweight in manufacturing in general. And what we're hearing consistently is lack of land is blocking progress, blocking opportunities for great jobs, blocking opportunities for revenue for public services. And we really need to get on this. In terms of methodology, I would stress, if you look at, if you don't have land, you will not have a trend of manufacturing growing because they can't grow because there's no land. So it's really the key to growing and taking advantage of this opportunity is to actually make the land available. And that's what the task force encourages all jurisdictions to think about. Finally, I would just say there is additional study work going on out of the task force to identify the best sites in Oregon and around in the Willamette Valley downstate or all around the state. They know and they're already aware that the proximity to the center is really important. And so it's very likely that your land would be particularly valuable, but also they're going to be looking at, all the characteristics, and you should see in the next, in fairly quickly, more information coming out of the task force on which parcels are particularly opportunity, where there's particular opportunity. And our goal is to get two 500-acre parcels and a number of smaller parcels available as quickly as we can so we can take advantage of this opportunity. So I just hope that's context. You're in a really important position. I really thank you for all your leadership. And I hope I think you've got a real opportunity in your community to play a big role in a very important sector. Thank you.
Hi, Duncan. I agree with you.
Could you hold on, please? Could you hold on, please? Are there any of the planning commissioners that have any questions for the testimony? All right, thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I just want to mention that I agree with Duncan that we are in the middle of probably the new Silicon Valley for chip manufacturing in the US. And I work
your name for the record, please.
Felipe Jarosky.
Thank you, sir.
I work in the engineering field, and I work with Daimler in downtown and Davis Tool Inc., which work for Intel. And I live close. I live in Sunset Ridge, and the type of the business that the city wants to propose to build here is a scrap metal facility to recycle scrap metal. And I agree with Duncan. We should bring smart jobs and use that land for bring a microchip facility and not a scrap metal. That's my point of view. So I agree with you, Duncan. We do have lots of industrial fields here, in small and big, but I don't think about the city allowing and losing the space for a scrap metal facility and not a consign processor in the electronic industrial business. That's my opinion. Thank you so much for allowing me to express my ideas.
Are there any questions of the testimony?
No, no.
Thank you. Is anyone else wishing to testify? Go ahead. Uh, I don't know how to pronounce it. What? Lee McElvain? Go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you for your time this evening, Chair King, Vice Chair Labonte, and Commissioners. For the record, my name is Lee McElvain, and I am the Economic Development Specialist with the Oregon Department of Land Conservation and Development. It's my responsibility to provide technical assistance and support to cities engaged in the long-range planning for employment lands through the Economic Opportunities or Analysis or EOA process. DLCD's goal in providing support to communities conducting EOAs is to help them produce analysis that will provide the appropriate amount of land for future employment growth and withstand any potential legal challenges. To provide a little background on DLCD's engagement with North Plains on its EOA, and I know this has already been briefly summarized, the department provided notice of intent to appeal the previously adopted plan based on concerns about the city's employment growth forecast and rationale supporting its employment land need. The city and department then filed a joint motion to suspend the appeal to work together through the department's concerns. I want to thank city staff and council for their engagement with the department over the past 2 months, during which we really have been able to make a lot of progress on addressing some of the department's concerns. It's clear from these engagements and from the analysis provided in the city's EOA that North Plains is growing. It needs to bring new lands into the UGB for employment growth and economic development, and it will be well positioned to take advantage of economic opportunities on the horizon through the Federal CHIPS Act and other investments. The state administrative rule that describes the EOA process is not prescriptive. That means that cities may be aspirational in their employment growth projections, and they can determine land need through a variety of analytical models. The department's concerns about the city's employment growth forecast have largely been addressed by the introduction of new analysis in this revised draft of the EOA. We do have remaining concerns, however, over the EOA's use of the target industries approach to quantifying land need. Although this approach has been used in other cities to demonstrate need for a specific industry, North Plains EOA is unusual in its application of the target industry approach across all industrial sectors. This is not a well-tested approach, and it really presents a vulnerability for North Plains in its approaching UGB expansion. The department is also concerned that the number of jobs forecasted to be accommodated on new employment land is too low to result in urban development levels as required by statewide planning goal 14. This goal requires efficiency of land use and the development of livable communities. And so while this concern might not have bearing on goal 9 matters, it may prove to be a challenge for the city when it comes time to amend and expand the UGB. I'll end my comments there, and I want to thank you for your time and consideration, and also the engagement that the city has extended to the department. I'm available for any questions if anyone would like to ask any.
I do have one question. I guess what I have here, testimony is the city's letter dated October the 12th in response to the Oregon Department letter dated the 10th. Have you read that?
I don't believe I have a letter from the city dated October 12th. I do have a letter that the city submitted on, I want to say October 6th. I'm recalling from memory right now, that addressed some of the concerns and suggestions that DLCD had made in response to the prior EOA draft.
Staff, in our package, we were sent a letter or dated October the 12th, addressed to Lee McElvain. Did that go to her?
I'm not in possession of the letter at this time.
Mr. Chairman, that letter was completed today and I was under the impression it had been sent out. I mean, I would have to check, but it was completed this afternoon. So it's an error on my part if it wasn't sent this afternoon, that letter, but we did want to get it into the record. So I'm not for certain offhand, given that she has said she hasn't gotten it.
Chair King,
Yeah, go
may-
ahead.
I was gonna ask if I may email it to Lee and then we can circle back. Got a follow-up question about.
Well, I just, yeah, because it's basically in response to the October 10th letter in which she's making her testimony from it. So I just wonder if that has any bearing on her thoughts.
And I'm gonna send it right now as soon as I find it.
Thank you. I'll look for that. And if possible, if you want to base discussion on the response provided this afternoon, I probably will need some time to read and confer with colleagues, but I can do my best today.
Oh, yeah, no problem. I don't want to put you on the spot or anything. I just, we had that in our testimony package and I just was assuming that you had received it. So that's my mistake for thinking that. Are there any other planning commission questions for the testimony? All right, thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to testify? Do we have anyone? No, not seeing anything or hearing anything? So assuming that she would need time for response, then I was just expecting that we would move forward with a decision.
Yep, you can certainly move forward. You can provide time this evening. It sounds like Lee would want to confer with associates, so she would.
So it's something
need
she wouldn't be
additional
able to
time.
respond to.
That it would need to,
So
the
I'll
record,
let the planning commission then decide.
right. You could leave the record open for a week for a response to the letter and then still, but you would need to come back and make a recommendation.
As a special meeting
That would be up to city staff. You could do that, right?
or, well, yeah.
There is time to do that and keep on the track with it.
Well, I guess what I'll ask then is in the response from the city on October the 12th, from in response to the state of Oregon's October the 10th concerns, do we feel that that has addressed their concerns?
Chair King,
Yeah.
the response, basically in summary, the response to the letter today, the response today dated the 12th of October, basically further explains and supports why we are hesitant to revise the EOA on the two topics she discussed in the manner they recommend. We cite rules and a court case on a previous UGB expansion elsewhere to explain that we run into, in our view, we run into a problem of doing analysis or adding information that down the road also makes us vulnerable to challenge because it becomes assertion and not necessarily strong supportable evidence. And then on the other point in our response for why we're hesitant to take up revisions they suggest, particularly the land density of industrial development that we're assuming for certain types of users, we reiterate, it's nothing new in the letter, but we reiterate basically that we patterned our assumptions very explicitly based on how industry has built out in the Helvetia area of Hillsborough, north of Highway 26. That's our real life market industry need model. And that is the basis for much of our analysis. And because of that, it's based on market behavior and is consistent with what we heard from those who we reached out to talk about opportunity. We're far more comfortable with that as evidence than applying general and maybe even older, outdated assumptions about how businesses might use their land. We're using an area as a model where businesses have actually used that land that way. And so we reiterate, we choose to do that rather than make more general assumptions about land density.
And is the city and staff comfortable with moving forward without the response from to this October 12th letter?
City Manager, I would think so. I think these letters will continue to go back and forth. We have we just have a difference of opinion in the methodology here, but we feel ours is solid case. We respect the relationship we've had with DLCD, but we would like to proceed moving forward.
There any other staff comments or any other testimony? Is it the consensus of the planning commission to move forward with a decision or wait for a response? Move forward. Okay. With that said, I will close the public hearing at 6:27. I will entertain a motion.
I move to recommend to City Council file number 22-096, Economic Opportunities Analysis Amendment.
Are we going to a date certain?
Yes, November 7th, 2022.
It's been moved by Commissioner Labonte, second by Commissioner Dunkamp for recommendation for approval of file number 22-096 Economic Opportunity Analysis Amendment to a date certain, November the 7th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, thank you. Okay. Item number 7B, public hearing is file 22-114 Brent Hill Village Design and Conditional Use Permit. This will be a quasi judicial in which the planning commission will be making decision or either approval, denial, or for continuance. Could I please get the public hearing process?
Thank you, Chair. The North Plains Planning Commission will conduct a quasi-judicial public hearing on file number 22-114 Brent Hill Village Design Review and Conditional Use Permit. The order of business will be as follows. The commission chair will open the public hearing and ask for a declaration of conflict of interest, ex parte contact, or personal bias. The commission chair will request the staff report. The commissioners may ask questions at any time during the public hearing. Any written correspondence submitted on behalf of the subject application will be orally presented, including the individual's name and address. The applicant will be invited to present oral testimony first. The public will be invited to provide oral and written testimony on the proposed land use permit, first by proponents, then opponents, followed by those individuals who are neutral. Additional staff comments will then be presented. If opposing testimony is presented, the applicant will be provided an opportunity for rebuttal. Opponents will also be provided an opportunity to speak in regards to the rebuttal. The commission chair will call for commission comments and discussion. The commission chair will close the public hearing or continue the hearing to a specific time and date. If the commission chair closes the public hearing, a decision will then be entered by the planning commission. The decision will be entered into a final findings of fact order, which will then be mailed with a letter detailing the decision to all parties to the proceedings. Appeals of a land use decision must be received by the city recorder within 15 days following the date the decision is mailed to the parties. All persons testifying shall be deemed parties to the proceeding and must provide their name and full mailing address. Parties will be notified of the decision, continuances, appeals, or other procedural actions required by the code and state law. The city municipal code, zoning and development standards specifies applicable criteria to be relied upon in making a decision. Those criteria and findings of fact are in the city staff report. Public testimony should be limited to those criteria and findings of fact or to other city or state land use standards that the person testifying believes applies to the proposed land use action. Failure to raise an issue in person or in writing with sufficient detail to afford the hearing body and parties to the hearing an opportunity to respond to that issue precludes appeal to the city council or land use board or to seek damages to the Washington County Circuit Court due to a condition of appeal.
All right, thank you. I'll open the public hearing at 6:31 for file number 22-114 Friend Hill Village Design and Conditional Use Permit. Are there any of the commissioners wish to declare any conflict of interest, ex parte contact, or bias? I contacted Commissioner Levante because I was surprised about the amount of commercial space being 4,700 in the application packet. The planning commission had several meetings, workshop meetings in discussing this. That proposal was denied by the planning commission that I thought, and we were looking at different proposals, and we were definitely looking at more commercial space. So I communicated this with, just to confirm her thoughts on that, and also contacted staff to get the responses from, or the information from our workshop meetings, just see what we had discussed. Now, I didn't contact any other commissioners because I didn't want to get this too far out of the way, but I just wanted to declare that I did have done that. So is there any other commissioners? Hearing none. Is there anyone that challenges any of the planning commissioners to hear this case? Hearing or seeing none. Then could I please get the staff report, agency comments, and conditions of approval?
Yes, thank you, Chair King. Right, the application for you this evening, city file number 22-114, is for the Bryn Hill Village Design Review and Conditional Use Permit. The staff report was provided on October 5th, 2022, that provides the application, the findings of fact related to the applicable zoning code provisions for approving a design review and conditional use permit, and the testimony that was submitted by agencies and the public, as well as a recommendation that staff found that this application did meet the requirements for design review and conditional use permit. Go to the next slide, please. This application is in the Bryn Hill Master Plan. I think, Andy, if you push click the button, it'll show. We're in phase 1, the 2.02 acre, and if you'll click one more time, multifamily mixed use areas. So this area was approved for between 27 and 48 multifamily units. As you'll recall, part of the NC zoning district and the Bryn Hill approval requires a 70-30 split between 70% single-family detached homes and 30% single-family attached and multifamily homes. So in order to make that 70-30 split with a maximum 2% deviation, this site does need to provide between 27 and 48 multifamily units. The remainder of the site, the whole site, 2.02 acres, was set aside as mixed use for mixed use development that would include commercial uses on the site. That was part of the Bryn Hill master plan originally approved and refined through the years. Next slide. The two buildings that are being proposed, one is the northernmost building that is adjacent to Main Street, is entirely residential. So that's a multifamily residential building with parking access there on the east side of the building and drive aisle access to Main Street and Terrell Drive. On the south side of the site, that is the mixed use building with a commercial storefront facing the corner at North and Main. And then residential uses on the upper floors and also some space on the first floor that's considered either residential or commercial. It's available to be flexed depending on the market. So that would, if those spaces were used fully as commercial, then we would be at a 46 unit multifamily count, and the amount of commercial space would go up. I can't remember the number right off the top of my head, but the applicant can respond to that, what size commercial area those two flex units represent. Next slide. Parking. We looked closely at parking all the way through the Bryn Hill development, but particularly related to this site, making sure that this site had enough parking. It depends, but if it's all residential in the northern building and then the full residential scenario in the southern building, then 100 parking spaces are required. If there is the commercial conversion of those residential spaces in the southern building, then up to 106 spaces would be required. This development does provide 109 spaces between the on-site parking spaces and the on-street adjacent spaces that count for half of a off-street parking credit for our development code. So there is enough parking associated with this development in either scenario, whether that flex space is residential or commercial. Next. Open space. In addition to our parks requirement that was addressed with the Bryn Hill development overall, multifamily in particular has an open space requirement on site. And this would be the type of open space available to residents, open space or recreation area. The code allows it to be flexible. The indoor flex space that's accessible by the residents of the site counts as well. But the idea is that if you live in a single family detached home, you have a yard and you have some access to some space. But if you live in a multifamily development, you don't necessarily have that unless it's provided. So this isn't intended to be additional public park space. It's intended to be open space or common area used by the residents. Now, there's a little overlap with the commercial spaces that, those plaza areas would also be used, but you could argue that some of the green spaces in the northern portion of the site would be accessed by the residents only. So I think the building, the site does provide the appropriate amount of common open space to accommodate up to 48 dwelling units. Next. Applicable code criteria. So this is what's in your staff report. There's findings for each of these different sections of the code. The most important being the design review and conditional use permit criteria. Design review, only a year ago, we put additional multifamily criteria into place. And so this is the first project that we've had a chance to measure against those. And it stood up well to them. Conditional use permit required because this is a code change that we put in place in April of this year. if there's going to be street facing residential in mixed use portion of the NC zone, then you need a conditional use permit so that you can be under a higher level of scrutiny, make sure we have the mix right between the commercial and residential uses on the site. Next slide. We did receive agency comments, as we always do, from Clean Water Services and Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue. Clean Water Services issued their standard service provider letter and their standard comments saying, get our permit before you hook up to any of our services. Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue, on the other hand, I realized late in the game that our service provider permit was for the Britton Hill site as a whole. I then alerted Jeremy Foster, our Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue plans reviewer, as well as the applicant, to say we don't have an updated service provider permit that addresses these buildings on the site. Jeremy Foster was able to give it an initial review before going out of town and say it's feasible. I'll probably have some conditions. They need to get the service provider permit. I don't see any major problems with this development. So we do recommend a condition that the applicant obtain a Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue service provider permit. And if you'll go to the next slide, the applicant did submit this application to Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue. It's the fire truck turn radius. It's really hard to see on this. It's probably not even worth trying, but there's a aquamarine fire truck at the north part on Trail Drive there, as well as one on North Avenue showing how those vehicles would travel along the edges of the property and then enter the site. And then there's lines through the site to show how that can be accommodated. But the plans reviewer in Valley Fire and Rescue will review this and make sure that there are no issues. If for some reason that fire marshal comes back and says, there's a big issue here, you have to reduce the size of your building or change around your drive aisles or anything like that, then the applicant would be required to come back in for modification. So it is a bit at risk to approve, knowing that they need a service provider letter, but I feel fairly confident that they'll be able to obtain that based on my conversations with the district. Next slide. Public testimony was submitted prior to the meeting and prior to the packet production, so we were able to put that in your packet. Michael Anders of Lennar Northwest LLC, who is the owner and developer of the Britton Hill site, did submit a letter in support of the proposed development. Next. So staff recommendation. Oh, that should not say master plan refinement. That's carryover. Apologies. Should say design review and conditional use permit application. We do find that this development as proposed meets the code criteria for design review and CUP conditional use permit to construct the two three-story buildings, one fully multifamily, one mixed use in phase 1 of the Britton Hill master plan. This is city file number 22-114. Staff recommends approval of the design review and conditional use permit with the conditions of approval outlined in the staff report.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions of the staff report? One question I have is that I know we had at least 1 or 2, if not 3, workshops with a proposed developer that brought us different options. Is this the same person that's developing this?
This is the same person.
So they are aware of our decisions or what comments we
Well,
made?
comments, yes, and those were pre-submittal, right? So those are not part of the record, as you pointed out, but they are, that is the same developer, yes.
Okay, so just, I guess, want to make sure that I'm not reading into this different than what was brought before the planning commission, but is this the consensus that the planning commission, the rest of the planning commission has, that we were looking at a larger commercial area? Okay. So with that, if there's no other questions of the staff, could the applicant please come forward? Can you state your name and address for the record?
Good evening, King, Chair King and Commission. My name is Jesse Nimick with JT Smith Companies. I'm the Senior Development Manager, and I was here in April for the work sessions that we went through. And just real briefly, I wanted to remind that towards the end of that second work session, Andy and Bill had provided some statements. Done some analysis on its own on the amount of commercial that would be appropriate here in this location. And it come up with a very similar number as what we were originally proposing in the 4,700 range square feet. And that additional commercial in this area could potentially pull commercial uses from the downtown district. So we wanted to be careful about that. And the decision that we decided to move forward with is provide almost double that as an optional, could be commercial or it could be 4 units of residential that we would continue to work with Andy and Bill throughout the process as we design and look at market analysis and just continue to look at what the right mix is for North Plains and not pulling businesses away from the downtown district. With that, there were a number of other requests, site plan wise, that were mentioned, extending a driveway access out onto Main and a few other things that I thought we did a really good job of providing. So I was a little surprised, I guess, that we were still confused if there was a difference in the amount of commercial. But the application you have in front of you is flexible. It can be 4,700 or it can be almost double that to around 8,700 square feet if I remember correctly. So with that, I've got my team members here from Pacific Community Design, land use planners, engineers, landscape architect, and they can go through the rest of our presentation.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, Stacy Connery with PCD 12564 Southwest Main Street in Tigard 97223. I'll try not to duplicate Heather's presentation. I appreciate the thorough presentation. I'll try to just enhance the information that she provided. With this first slide, I just want to draw attention to the surrounding land uses around the mixed use site, which is shown here in the pretty green corner here, which is adjacent to some existing detached alley-loaded single-family homes and some alley-loaded row homes on the eastern side of the mixed-use site. This slide is included just to show the relationship of the project to downtown. It's just over a quarter-mile distance from downtown, so just for context going forward. And this is our site plan, which is coloring in green the amount of landscaped area, which is much more extensive than what we have counted towards our common open space areas. The multifamily building is shown in the northwest corner of the site. It includes 24 units, 12 of which are 1 bedroom, 12 are 2 bedroom units. The mixed-use building in the southern portion of the site will include 24 units, 22 bedroom and 4 3-bedroom units. It includes the commercial retail space in the western portion of the building, and the flex area on the ground floor is in the middle of the building. The eastern portion of the building includes common open space amenities, including a great room, a media room, kitchen.
You should talk to the microphone.
Sorry.
It was on, maybe it went off.
Jim, thank you. Our next slide goes into more detail on the parking, so I'll discuss the parking with the next one. And Heather described this pretty extensively. We do have 96 on-site parking spaces. There are 26 adjacent on-street parking spaces on North Avenue, Main, and Terrell Drive, which are delineated here with little cars to help illustrate their locations. We also have outdoor bike parking facilities at the main entrance for each building on the parking lot side of the building. Two slides. We've included floor plans to help illustrate the spaces on the ground level of the buildings. This is the mixed-use building, showing the commercial space on the western portion of the building. The 4 middle units are all flex space that could be residential or commercial, depending upon how that need is defined. And the eastern portion of the building includes the community amenities. And our next slide here is the ground floor of the multifamily, which includes 8 units. There's 3 floors to the multifamily building, each with 8 units per floor. And the access to these buildings, the primary access is from the parking lot side of the buildings, with secondary accesses of the patios on Main Street. We've included some conceptual elevations, which these are characterized as conceptual because they do not represent the actual color scheme of the project, of the actual proposed buildings, and do not include the architectural materials that have been added for the commercial frontage. But we did include these for examples of the massing and what the buildings can look like with mature landscaping. The multifamily buildings on the left with the facade that would face onto Main Street. And the mixed-use building is on the right with the facade with the commercial label would face onto Main Street, and the southern facade would face North Street. These perspectives are representative of the color scheme that would occur on both buildings. We have the mixed-use building shown here to illustrate the commercial store frontage, which includes brick on the front facade as well as full-length windows. And we have a key map that's shown in the lower right corner to show where you're looking at this building. So this is right at the corner of North and Main. Our first 2 slides are from the same location, just different perspectives in space. So we can go ahead to the next one. And so this is more of a ground level perspective looking towards the commercial area. Next. Okay, here we're looking at the north side of the mixed use building from the entrance off of Main, and where the commercial, the big windows are on the ground floor are where plaza locations would be, with seating and benches and some enhanced landscaping with a pathway going through those areas. Next slide. This is the facade facing Main Street with 2 doorway entrances shown. If I could use a pointer, I pointed them.
Stacy, we get your
Thank you. So doorways. This is awesome. And then, yeah. We're happy to answer any questions at this point, and we can go back to slides as needed.
Commissioner Duncan.
So it appears that you're
you're planning on those 4 units not being commercial right now even. True? Because even your windows on the outside don't look like they're commercial, they're more residential. You box it into 4 separate units instead of being open flex space.
Could we go back to the first mixed use building slide?
As an elevation. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so our intention is over the next year to work with Andy and Bill to determine what that space wants to be. And the storefront style, if it is going to end up being commercial, that's before we get it.
Separate units, unless you make it big, open flex spaces with commercial bricking and windows and stuff, then there's probably opportunity to move into that.
Right.
You know,
But the market conditions can change over the next 10 years too, and maybe we want to convert it back to commercial space if it were to be built out now as residential. So we wanted the opportunity to have that flexibility with at least those 4 units. So, and the way these buildings are
but if you
constructed.
build it out as residential to begin with, your opportunities for commercial are very slim.
But then on the other hand, if it goes the other way, then there isn't market conditions for that at the time, a year from now, we've seen some crazy things happening in the economics. So
Going both ways.
right, so that it would be devastating to the project to have another 4,000 square feet of space that doesn't get rented, right? So we would have to have the option to do something different with it, and so that's what we're asking for. So
I
the way
guess
the buildings are
I kind of
constructed,
envisioned that you leave it open and go commercial on the facade and everything, and then if things just don't work out, then you can build it out as individual. But if you build it all out, and you invest all your money in the residential space and the bathrooms and kitchens and everything, probably not going to be commercial.
yeah, a lot of those materials actually change over a lot, you know, after tenants live in the units where sometimes we even change a lot of the countertops and flooring and things like that, even after one tenant moves out. But the construction of the building itself is slab on grade for the main floor, so it actually wouldn't be that difficult to change one way or the other.
Do you have anything else? No. All right, thank you. Do you have the email I sent you with the exhibits and part of the public record?
Not part of the public record.
Well, isn't it? I mean, it should
Well,
be.
so it was pre,
Yeah, but I did, I sent it to you.
You want to
as
enter
staff.
it
It
into
should
the
be
public-
entered into the public
Okay,
record.
gotcha.
Thank you.
Would you like us to open, I can send that email to Andy and he can open whatever you'd like
Yes,
to
please.
pull up. Okay, Andy, I sent, were you specifically looking at 3A? Because I sent him that since you showed me that, or do you have the package?
Well, I just, a reminder to the applicant of option 2 and option 3A that we discussed at the workshop. And just with the understanding that I do understand and remember that at least Bill made comments about the 4,700 square feet, but unfortunately, Bill does not make the decision. Right? So from the plan consensus already, I think that 4,700 was something that we weren't going to accept. So I just wanted to remind you of your option 3A that we were willing to accept. Do you have that available?
I'm gonna pull that
I
out.
emailed that to you just now. So-
I'm gonna unplug. It's not like people doing my email.
And so we'll enter this into the public record.
You sent me 2 emails.
Yes, the first one I just sent was just 3A and the second one was all 4, was the email
Which one should I
conversation.
use?
They both have 3A, we're just looking for 3A. The
The
one,
email conversation should be part of the record.
the one today that you sent?
Yes.
Okay. I'm waiting for it. And to Lori for the record.
So there's 4 attachments. Which one would you like me to show up?
3A.
Yeah, that'll work. So this is what I'm referring to that was at the workshop, conceptual site plan option 3A. And just want to get a consensus from the planning commission that this is the one we were looking at. That was acceptable with 8,700 square feet.
Just leaving the eastern portion common area.
Just the area in the pink is 8,700 square feet.
Right.
Okay, so I mean, that's the one that we recommended to the applicant at the time.
I'm pretty
Or
sure,
not the applicant,
I'm pretty sure that's what we're looking at,
the,
because the far right was.
when they made their presentation at the workshop. I just wanted to remind you that that's the one the planning commission was interested in.
And this is still possible with this plan as we presented it.
Well, you know, that's up to you. You're asking for 47 and we'll make a decision. Whatever you want to do.
Well, our application actually says that it could be up to 8,700.
I think you said add another 2,000 square feet in your proposal.
It's the exact same area. The 4 flex spaces and the commercial space, the 4,700 square foot that's dedicated right now is exactly the same area on this exhibit as what's in our application right now.
May I ask a clarification?
Go ahead, please.
So are each of the residential units 1,000 square feet essentially?
Roughly.
Right, okay. So 4,700
Hey,
is.
Steve, I think there's some sound up here somewhere, but I don't know how to make, oh, wait, I have to put never mind. Earbuds.
Can you mute yourself, Doris? Thank you.
So 4,700 square feet is for sure right away. 4,000 in 1,000 square foot increments is flexible.
Well, it says on page 23 of your staff report, on page 127.
I believe I got it wrong. I believe I read it wrong. I was reading it as 2,000, but it's actually 4,000. I apologize.
That's where I'm getting the 2,000.
I'm the source of confusion. The applicant has clarified.
Yeah, because I added it up to slightly a little over, I think. 7,809 square feet.
So,
I apologize.
yeah, I'm more interested in building it all out as commercial than if years down the road, if something doesn't pan out. Then you come back and address the planning commission again on that space, but to build it out initially is residential and then we'll fix it later if it doesn't. I mean,
Wow.
that's,
I guess what I'm trying to get at is I'm giving the applicant
I know.
consideration, because the planning commission will make a decision to accept or deny or with conditions. So
I understand.
kind of the ball's in their court. Go ahead with your presentation.
I think we're wrapped up. We're just ready for questions.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
Just for clarification on your, on the northern building, that's strictly residential. On the lower units that will have to be outside the exterior exit, is it going to be a private screened patio or is it?
Yes, and that was one of Rudy Cadwood's conditions in his letter, is that we'll put some sort of screen around each one of those patios, be it vegetation, if it's going to be vegetation, it'll be evergreen, or some sort of privacy railing around there.
And just to kind of confirm with Stuart, I too agree that we should build out the lower, or the lower building as commercial. You know, we just looked at our EOA tonight, that said we need all this commercial space, you know, and to just not utilize what we already have within the city doesn't seem right. So I would like to see it built out as commercial rather than contingent flex space apartments.
Any other questions? Thank you for your testimony.
Chair King, am I allowed to?
What's that?
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay. Not asking for letters of interest or anything, but have you been getting an idea of, from a market perspective, what could work there? As a potential brand for it?
We've spoken with a couple of brokers. We haven't gotten very intensive in it just yet because we don't have yet land use approval. So there's a lot of hurdles that we need to go for yet, and I think we'll be sure to start getting letters of intent for something we don't have land use approval for yet, and probably be 18 to 24 months.
Right, yeah, that's why I said I wasn't asking for letters of intent.
Right,
Just,
right.
general
We've been
idea.
talking about it. It's-
Okay,
it's
because
a
you,
very
you've invoked
common
my
area.
name a few times about your work for me, so I just want to know what I'm getting into and what the future commercial space will be. So,
Yeah.
okay.
I just want to be respectful of the comments that Bill made, that we should be talking about not pulling business away from the downtown district and still provide the opportunity for what planning commission was loud and clear to me they wanted. So I wanted the ability to do both. That's what I tried to do here.
And I definitely think we can. I mean, not all businesses are suitable for downtown, so we definitely can find businesses suited for that area.
Yeah, and from our perspective, we would prefer it to be commercial, right? Because it generates a higher rent per square foot. So, but if the market isn't going to allow it, again, having another 4,000 square foot or possibly 8,700 square foot of this building that's not leased would be devastating to owning and operating this facility in a deficit, so.
Any other questions of the applicant?
Chair King, may I ask a question?
Go ahead, please.
Just so that I get it right, because I think I made a mistake in my staff report. If everything that is flex space in addition to commercial built out, would there be then 44 multifamily units?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I think I
But
listed
it
46.
could go anywhere between, if it,
44 to 48, and you could choose to just flex 2 of them, you know,
exactly,
on
and
the
that
back
would
or
be the
something. Yeah.
easiest way or the
Mhm.
most likely way to add commercial, and possibly be 46 units and, add another 2,000 square foot of commercial, that the front to back full length would operate better as a commercial retail space.
Okay, thank you.
So the fact that you haven't come up with your intent yet, why you haven't put anything on the internet about it? On the internet, you can put something up about the land.
I'm sorry, this is for the planning commission comments only. If you- I didn't get time for it. Ask your questions. Thank you. Okay, is there any other questions of the applicant? Hearing none, thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to testify? Now would be appropriate time. Well, you
I'm
have,
here to listen.
well, you have comments. I'm giving you the opportunity to do it now, sir.
Well, I just sit up there and ask.
Yes, please, because we need your name and address for the record. Okay. Is there any other testimony? It's a public hearing. Any other testimony?
Chair King.
Yes,
Rudy, how about this raise this meeting?
go ahead, sir.
Yes, thank you, Stuart, Mr. Chair, and other planning commission members. My name is Rudy Cadlub, 18335 River Edge Lane, Lake Oswego, Oregon. As I recall, and we had the approval of the master plan, this was a bit of a concern and a contention for us early on because of our concern about retail demand outside of the downtown core. And Stuart, you have a great memory, certainly better than mine, but as I recall, we had a condition in there that if after 2 years from the completion of the last phase of Bryn Hill, and we had not, weren't able to garner leases for the commercial space, that it could revert back to residential, something along that lines. Do you recall the exact language, or Heather, do you?
I can pull that up for you, Chair King, unless you have it right there.
It was actually in the staff report.
Oh, yes, because it's in the NC code. We responded.
You
Yes,
have that exactly where that is.
I believe it's 5 years.
It's 5 years and then it goes to the planning commission, I can tell you that.
That's correct.
But it's after the last occupancy permit is pulled.
Right.
Which this unit has at least 44 occupancies, so.
May I read the portion of the code?
Yes,
So
please.
this is Development Code, section 155259 sub D. In the NC zoning district, a minimum of 2 acres shall be reserved from exclusive residential development so that commercial, institutional, and/or mixed-use development options are available. This reserved area shall be included in one of the development phases proposed with the master plan. If development has not occurred in this reserved area for a minimum of 5 years from the issuance of the final occupancy permit of the final residential unit in the same development phase as the reserved area, then the applicant may submit an application for subdivision or design review for the city to the city for exclusive residential development with the planning commission as the review and decision authority. The reserved area can be used as temporary open space in the interim.
So this, yeah, so this applicant is coming forth with something well ahead of that timeframe, and suggesting 4,700 square feet of commercial initially, with flex space that could go another 4,000, as I understand it, Heather. So up to 8,700. Just it seems like there might be an opportunity here to provide the developer with some flexibility, in as much as we haven't really established much of a retail demand either on Commercial Street or nearby on Main Street. So perhaps having 4,700 now and with a possibility of 4,000, clearly within that 5-year time frame, would be a reasonable assumption or a reasonable consideration for this developer. I think the developer said they're motivated by getting the highest rent possible, and that commercial, if there's a demand, would rent for more than residential. But if there's no demand and they've got 4,000 feet of empty space, then it becomes a drag on that project and could end up being a blight on the site itself. I will remind you that in Villebois, which is a neighborhood of 2,700 homes, there's 7,500 people living there. That project just sold the last parcel, which was the mixed use parcel, to will have 148 apartments with mixed use. That site itself probably will have only about 5,000 square feet of retail. So we're just seeing a really difficulty in the suburbs to get retail space and demand. Retail is shrinking around the country as more and more people are buying online. And so it's really hard to estimate demand for retail. So I would suggest that we not put this developer in our city of North Plains behind the 8 ball and potentially having a space that sits vacant for quite some time. We actually have a space in Villebois that was built in 2007, commercial space, probably the prime corner in Bilbao that is still a virgin space, has never had a tenant. So it's a risk for sure for both the city and this developer to put too much retail.
Is there anything else?
Yeah, no, that's all I had to say.
Any questions of the applicant? Thank you. Is there any other testimony?
Amy's iPhone has her.
I think that's.
No, that's
Oh, is that the cursor? Okay.
That's fine.
That's the cursor,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
it's yellow with the numbers.
Seeing or hearing none.
Oh,
Go ahead. State your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Mallory Lilly. My address is 10950 Northwest Main Street, Portland, Oregon. This is my first time at one of these. This might be a weird question, but I thought I should ask. I just want to know, have you guys put thought into public transportation? My house is definitely on the street that will be between downtown and this new public, possibly commercial area. And I'm just wondering, is that going to be at a different hearing or how it's just?
Well, we haven't done anything as far as planning commission level or staff that I know of. There's limited public transportation, the ride and different things that come down Commercial Street, and those facilities would be, someone would need to reach out to and say, can you move from here to here? Because they, from my understanding, they come off the highway, they come down Glen Cove, they come in Commercial Street, kind of turn around and go back. Now, would they loop a different way? I mean, if they had riders, they probably would. So, I mean, I would get a hold of the city, find out who those transportation facilities are, and see if there's something that they could add to them. Let's staff add something else.
I do not, you're correct. That's outside the scope of this hearing tonight. Well, I'm city manager and always interested in talking to folks about public transportation interests. Like you said, it's being out of Metro and being out of the TriMet district is a little more of a challenge on the economics, but there are some services, albeit limited, trips per day. There's some bus rides from between Hillsborough, TriMet services and the things. Yeah, absolutely.
Anyone else wishing to testify? Online?
Question for staff.
Go ahead.
There's been a lot of discussion about market fluctuations and difficulties filling in or selling or leasing whatever office spaces. And I'm just wondering, we have several new commercial buildings going up on Glencoe. We have the Roll Tide with the commercial. I don't know if the city's heard anything from that as far as if anybody's come in for business licenses. I know the Collective is coming down the pike. Are all those buildings already agreements in place for leasing? Or, I mean,
At the end of your bill, we can take those questions.
For the Collective, the corner of Glencoe and Pacific, I know more than I do about the Roll Tide property, just because the city owns the Collective property, I'm more involved there. They do have some letters of intent, and they're actively looking to fill it out with retail space, restaurant, food pub, something like that. I don't know on Roll Tide. I think that's 5 units of 2,000 square feet each. I'm not sure how it's being marketed, to be
I'm
honest.
just curious.
Yeah, but we've not seen any activity come through the.
But the Collective is pretty set as far as when it's ready to develop.
I'd say it's, there's 2 anchor units there, and then probably space for another 6 or so retail units, but we don't have any confirmation if those are filled up yet, but I know that they're actively looking for those spaces to be filled up. And they do have some of those things secured before they come in for land use, because they are trying to market pretty heavily.
Sure.
Okay, any other comments or testimony? Hearing none. Close the public hearing at 7:20. Deliberations, I'd like to ask a question of staff. In the options for this, if it's the consensus of the planning commission to want more commercial, is it better for us to reopen, continue, or is it better for us to say that's what it is, or is it just better for us to deny based on that?
So the applicant has proposed flex space, so you could absolutely approve with the space coming in as commercial, and then, 5 years after occupancy, if nothing happens, that applicant does have the option to come in to convert to residential. So it's sort of backwards. So what's being proposed, or what, Rudy Cudlip testified that it could go residential and then have the option to go commercial. The way the code was written was really to allow people to occupy those units, and then hopefully that would be the draw that would bring the commercial uses in. So you could definitely approve this, but require that those spaces be reserved for commercial. You could also find that 4,700 square feet is what the applicant is saying, and the finance director says is appropriate in distance from downtown, but that, you think those other units probably should go commercial. So maybe you do a lesser than 5-year hold on that, require that they be ready to be commercial for 2 or 3 years, and see what happens when all of Bryn Hill's developed, which is supposed to happen by 2025. So you do have some options. A really nice way to go that would keep, lessen the likelihood of appeals and dragging out with the city is to reopen tonight and ask the applicant how they would respond to those types of things as well.
Comments of the planning commission? Well, I thought I made it pretty clear that I'm giving them the opportunity. They didn't seem to want to take it, so not sure why reopening it would do any good.
Well, if I can just clarify, I think they did say that they proposed it as flex so that there was the opportunity.
But it's being built out as residential.
Or not built out at this time.
But-
Another option.
But that's what it is right now, and there would be no bricking or anything that even looks like commercial. It would be addressed as it's going to be residential.
Right, it's proposed without the brick site,
Right.
correct.
So, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I think reopening
Okay.
This is discussion with the planning commission.
All right. We could reopen, see if there's some negotiating points there with the builder. It'll only take a moment, I think, to see if we can get there or not. My 2 cents.
Was that a consensus of the planning commission?
I'm fine with either reopening it or staying.
Commissioner Howe? Okay. We'll reopen the public hearing at 7:24 for file number 22144, 22-114, Bryn Hill Village Design Review and Conditional Use Permit. Opportunity for the applicant to make further comments.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. I did want to clarify, we don't have a plan to build it one way or the other yet. The intent is that we would work with city staff over the next year to figure out what is best for the city based on the way the market is going. We would prepare construction drawings according to what that plan would be. If the intent of the planning commission would be to deny the application as it is right now, I would strongly request a condition that it start out as commercial and see how it goes. 5 years is a really long time to wait to get zero revenue on amount of space that we have to pay to build. So a much shorter time frame than 5 years to be considered would be greatly appreciated. 2 years would be fantastic. So I just wanted to clarify our intent and allow you guys to have to ask me any other questions.
I've got a question. In a number of different drawings from either, and I can't recall exactly which, it could have been the neighborhood meeting or the pre-app conference. I saw some drawings in which this area was considered commercial for gym, commercial for daycare. These, and I didn't know if the gyms or the daycares nor did I get supposedly just for the residents, or if that was going to be commercial daycare or gyms. And so, I mean, if you have the space available as an opportunity for the, you know, while it's not being used as commercial, that those uses could be in there at that time.
Yeah, so we're suggesting potential operators in there. We don't intend to operate that space ourselves.
I mean, it's not the apartment complex that's doing that.
Right, so that would be our property manager. We're using Atlas Property Management right now. They do some commercial property management, and so they would help us with our leasing as far as that goes. We were simply stating some things, some potential users that could go in there that we would actually pursue. You know, perhaps Anytime Fitness or something like that would be an excellent user that we would love to have in there. Or a daycare would be an operator that we would love to have. So those are the types of things that we want to pursue that would be complementary to our tenants and our use. On the far east end of the building, we do have a gym that would be just for the residents. If we got a tenant in there that was in Anytime Fitness or something like that, that wanted to take down 4,700 square feet or something like that, we'd probably do something different with our small gym, right? And work with them to provide tenants with free memberships or something like that.
Any other questions of the applicant? Yes, no? I guess my concern is that we're looking for more commercial space. You're saying there's flex space. As far as the time frame, the NC code says 5 years after the last occupancy permit. So that would be 5 years after the last apartment permit for occupancy.
So just to
Because
clarify,
that's in phase 1.
just to clarify though, that is before you can go strictly residential on the whole site. So that wouldn't necessarily apply, that 5 year.
To what we're talking about.
To what we're
So
talking about.
we
You
could-
can set your time frame.
So we're not
That's-
changing, modifying the code by
No,
anything. We'd
you are
be
just
making an
determining what is
exception
the
for this.
appropriate amount of mixed use and what is the appropriate time frame to hold the opportunity.
So,
and if I may, I believe that says in that phase, not
Right.
necessarily, so the Brindle Village lot is part of the larger phase.
Right.
And there are many homes in there that still don't have occupancy.
Right.
Right.
And so
5 years has not begun.
5 years hasn't even close to beginning, and it may not begin for many years in the future with the residential
But-
housing.
more than likely, phase 1 will be built out, which includes this mixed use prior to the rest of the development being completed.
I don't know about that.
No, that's because you're not Lennar, yeah.
Right.
So,
We are a single family developer.
Yeah.
And we've stopped building single family homes.
but you're not Lennar. Okay. Because they haven't stopped. Okay, so I mean, just to, for the planning commission, I mean, we're looking at a decision, as far as I'm concerned, maybe you guys input yourself, but the 4,700 square feet is not enough commercial space. We don't want to call it flex space with possibly being built into apartments at this time. As was demonstrated at the workshop meeting at option 3A of 8,700 square feet, which is what they're suggesting is the rest of the area of the flex space to the added to the 47 would be 87 approximately. So, and then we could, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, we could say that condition of approval is that it has to be the 87, and then put a time frame on when they could come back to the planning commission. Or
That's correct. I think you'd want to be clear that the 4,700 is not negotiable. That stays commercial. There's no coming in for something different
for the
unless,
47.
yeah, that would be a whole new site development that would, in my mind, have to meet the 5-year mark, because that would be a conversion to full residential on the site. But for the additional 4,000 that came in as flex space, if the planning commission is requiring that to be available as commercial space, then you could put whatever time frame you want on that.
And just to clarify, when we're talking about the last occupancy permit of phase 1, this includes the multifamily housing.
That was the intent, so that you would have those rooftops filled, so that you'd have.
So you
people
have the
there.
opportunity
Right,
for
right.
people to be there. So
Right. Now, if for some reason it's related to obtaining occupancy permit, not related to leasing. So that if for some reason units don't rent out fully, it's not linked to that. It's linked to finishing the building, having them available for people to get in there.
occupancy,
Mhm,
yeah.
correct.
So a risk point for the builder too would be if Lennar decides not to build out all of phase 1.
Correct. That could lessen the amount of rooftops that are in the area.
Do we know how many permits have been pulled? Phase 1,
150.
You gotta list every time.
for phase 1.
Oh, phase 1 is one. How many units? I can pull that up. Most of phase 1,
Has already had permits pulled,
correct. And phase 2 is being permitted right now.
and this is in phase 1.
Yes.
This is in phase 1.
So it's
So
already
they're out of
100.
Right. But 150 total included phase 2, I think. And maybe
So-
not quite.
Almost all of them been pulled except for what doesn't exist.
I would say that's true. I think there's, what are you receiving right now? Phase 2 permits?
Phase 2.
Mhm.
That's what
I think mostly phase 1 is, I think we've seen most of the townhomes, it's just single family. I think so.
So any other questions of staff before I close the public hearing? Yes.
So,
Okay.
oh, you want to deliberate afterwards?
Yes. So we'll close the public hearing at 7:33. Need deliberation. Commissioner Levante?
My clarification, so we're talking about requiring, in addition to the proposed 4,700 square feet, to include all of the flex space equaling the 8,700-ish square feet. And then are we thinking of like a 2-year from build out or last occupancy for the first phase? As far as a possible conversion for only that area outside the 4,700 square feet? Is this what we're looking at?
I think that's pretty much sums it up. I mean, the 2-year could be. since
Or it
it's-
doesn't have to be
since
2
it-
years, I
Well,
just-
no, I understand it, but I'm just saying, it's not necessarily, and it doesn't have to be tied to phase 1. Because it's the other, the NC that's tied to phase, in the same phase, which is phase 1. In this, we could make it specific to the multifamily.
Right. Just
So
to
that,
this site.
so that if phase 1 didn't, it would start sooner.
I mean, and I do see the benefit of waiting a little bit longer, only because
Because
the more rooftops
more
you
people,
get,
yeah.
the more opportunity you're gonna have to fill that
Exactly.
much space.
Yeah, so I think that's pretty much sums it up, is
So we just need
that
to
we
find
would
a
say that we're hard on the 4,700 commercial. We want the 4,000, additional 4,000 to be, of the flex space to be commercial at this time, which then would be approximately the 8,700 square feet. And then if we want to base it on a 2-year from occupancy for the multifamily. That'd be one thing to base it on. Any other deliberation?
Sounds good to me.
I think that's a fair, yeah.
Staff, have any comments?
What was the total count between phase one and phase two, with phase one and phase two?
Pull that up for you. Andy, loading. Phase one is 159 units,
That's not counting.
not counting these 44 to 48, correct? It does count them as one because that's lots. So, yeah, you got that. Okay, and then phase two. Goes from 160 to 2. Like the very last one. 241. So 241 phases 1 and 2. About 80 of them are in the second phase. And they applied for permits, like we said, on probably 150. And our
So. presumably all but 9.
I mean, roughly, it might be all of
Yes,
them.
sir.
Yeah, I didn't keep a ordered track of 1, 2, 3, 4. I just reviewed them as they came in.
So
But
the bottom line is that more than likely they will build out in phase one.
we have not
So
seen any
it doesn't-
slowing of.
So we could base it on phase one or we could base it on the multifamily.
Correct.
Okay.
Is there a preference on either one?
It would be easier for staff to track. I'm speaking for Steve here, if it was the
Phase
site
one.
itself.
And
The
that's-
site itself.
and I think that's more appropriate since that's where the majority of people
Right.
are. So no other deliberations, then I'll entertain a motion. Right.
Okay, do we need to make any corrections into the staff report?
No, because it won't carry forward on the, in the notice of decision will reflect this portion. Yeah.
I move to approve Bryn Hill 22-144 Bryn Hill Village Design and Conditional Use Permit with the changes to the first floor of the southern building to include both the 4,700 square feet as commercial and designating the adjacent 4,000 flex area as commercial with a 2-year time frame for build out of that building.
That could convert to residential
Could
with,
they could come back to the plan?
with a
commission?
design review
With a
application
design review
to the planning commission after 2 years
Yeah.
from final occupancy of the last residential unit on the site.
That.
Yeah.
Occupancy permit issuance.
That they're, would add to that, that they're coming back to the planning commission zone under 4,000 plus or minus flex space. Not full thing.
And we'll make it clear in the conditions that it comes back to planning commission for that conversion, because that may fall under a type 2 design review to do that. If you just looked at it straight through the code.
As a change of use.
Yes, because you're changing the use, so that requires design review, but it's a smaller percentage of the overall building falls into the criteria. So we'll make sure that the condition reads that because this is a decision by the planning commission, a change would need to come back to the planning commission to basically modify a condition. Is what would.
And what is that square footage exactly?
I don't know exactly, but it's really close to 4,000
Is it-
or 1,000 square foot.
Okay.
I'll second that.
I heard, It's been moved by Commissioner Labonte, second by Commissioner Nunn. I heard it first. So, that we make approval of file number 22-114 Bryn Hill Village Design Review and Conditional Use, with changes that the commercial space is 4,700 hard space, and the additional approximately 4,000 square feet to be commercial, with the ability of the applicant to come back to the planning commission within 2 years after the last occupancy of the multifamily unit. Cover it?
Yes, thank
Okay,
you.
all those in favor say aye. Those opposed? Abstentions? All right, that passes. Thank you very much.
I request just a 2-minute recess.
Yes. Hey, take it away.